Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is W Shadows and welcome back to a brand new video. We have been blessed with a new patch coming up tomorrow, June 30th. At the time of recording, this is June 29th. The patch has been announced on June 26th, my birthday, but since it was my birthday, I didn't actually do anything relating to playing the game or anything of content creation. I'm sorry, I was lazy. So today I'm gonna be doing a bunch of videos. This is the first of many, hopefully. I want to go over the class changes coming up tomorrow in the expansion. I think we're about 2 weeks away from the next season, or a week and a half away from the next season, so this should be the last patch before 12.1 comes out and season 2 begins. So let's just take a quick look and see the changes. There's not many for Devour to summit ahead of time, just taking the small self-healing nerf, and that's about it. Shouldn't really affect much. At the same time, I would like to point out that I am queuing for a solo shuffle game at the same time, so that's why you can see it in the background, because the queues are terribly long. I literally just turned off the stream 2 minutes. The queues are 25-30 minutes just for 3-3s and trolls who give me 2 and 4. Unfortunately, what can you do? That is the solo shuffle experience. Let's get started with the patch. There's honestly, it's not quite as big as the patch coming out for 12.1, but I guess that is good. It is the last patch of the season. First of all, classes: Druid, balance, all damage increase 4%. Fine with me, completely necessary. Boomy was a bit underwhelming up until this point, so other than its crowd control and everything else, which of course is good because it's a druid, the damage has been very underwhelming. Completely fine with me. These changes are buffs to Feral, but not in PvP combat, so we do not care. We will ignore this. Resto Druid. Restoration's damage compared to other healers is lower than we liked. We're rebalancing some of Restoration Druid's damage out of Thrash and into the rest of the kit. So all damage increased by 15% and Bear Form Thrash damage reduced by 25%. This is a big change too. This 15% is going to make itself felt. I think Markers is going to have a great time playing it. This seems like an interesting change. It's probably going to be a bitch to play against in 2v2s, but it already is, regardless of the crazy damage. Let me make the webcam a bit bigger while we're at it. There we go. I'm all cute. Gotta be all here. Evoker, Devastation, all ability damage increased by 3%. Okay, fair enough. I mean, I feel like it's in a good spot as is, but if people feel like it's a bit underwhelming, then it is what it is. Arcane Mage, all ability damage increased by 3%. I have not seen anything worth the time on Arcane Mage. Arcane Mage seems to be terrible at this point. I don't think this 3% is going to do much about that, but we'll see. I feel like it's such an easy class to deal with, and everything else that the core problem is more than just 3% ability damage. Regardless, let's see how that turns out in tomorrow's patch. Priest, Holy Priest gets some buffs for Holy Word Serenity healing, and Holy Word Sanctifying healing increased by 20%. Then Resto Shaman, a change that does not apply to PvP combat. Okay, cool. Now, the PvP changes, and mostly what interests us, what we care about, the Demon Hunter Devourer. Developers notes, Devourer Demon Hunters have been performing above expectations, especially in defensive matrix, so self-healing is being reduced. Shadow Souls now heals for 0.5% of maximum health per soul fragment consumed, was 1% in PvP combat. So this is... It is a bit of a nerf. I'm not going to say it's not, because it does, of course, stack up. When you have a Reap that gathers 10 souls or 8 souls or something like that, instead of getting 8% of your maximum health regenerator, you're going to get 4%. So it is, it is something, but it's not necessarily the end of the world. We still do very fine. We actually have a decent amount of self-sustained heals, especially once we start blasting on Metamorphosis. This is a bit of a nerf, but hey, they're not touching our damage. We should still be fine. To continue, DK Unholy. Unholy's burst damage is overwhelming too frequently, so contributing abilities are receiving a reduction, with some of that overall damage moving into the steadier output from Dreadplague. Putrefied damage reduced by 15% in PvP combat, Soul Reaper damage reduced by 15% in PvP combat, and Dread Plague damage increased by 15% in PvP combat. I don't know enough about DK as of yet. They're dialing back quite a bit on the burst now that I think about it. Soul Reaper is part of a big part of the burst, so them dialing back on that, as well as Putrefy as well, might be big. So hopefully, hopefully it's a good nerf, God willing. Guardian Druids. Guardian's burst potential with their Apex talent has been higher than we would like for a tank spec in PvP. Wild Guardian now echoes at 50%, was 200% effectiveness in PvP combat. I don't know, I haven't seen any Guardian Druids in PvP, at least not in shuffles. Maybe in open world, sure, but in arenas, definitely not. Evoker Augmentation, all damage increased by 8% in PvP combat. Yo, okay, so augmentation has been pretty doo-doo for a while as well. This is interesting. I'm curious to see how that's gonna go. I might give it a shot as well at some point to see how this aura buff overall looks like. Evoker, Preservation. Preservation Evoker is slightly overperforming in PvP, so we're making one additional targeted nerf to them in this pass. Temporal Burst makes it hard for enemies to react to important casts like Sleepwalk. Thank fuck. So we're reducing its effectiveness, dude. Fucking Evokers with haste spamming Sleepwalk in 0.5 seconds are disgustingly scary. It's so hard to deal with that, and you have to have like instant reflexes at times when you get that extra haste buff on the dragon. So temporal burst increases haste, movement speed, and cooldown recovery rate by 15% in PvP combat. Was third. This is considerable. This is a very considerable nerf. Let's see how that goes. Hunter, marksmanship. I'm actually angry about this, bro. I started playing marksmanship on my birthday. I literally started playing on the 24-hour stream. We played like less than 100 rounds. We got to 2,500 with marksmanship. Not even a day later, 2 days later, they fucking nerf it. Are you kidding me, man? I was having so much fun. Double tap now causes aim shot to fire at 16% effectiveness, or your next rapid fire to fire 16% additional shots was 40%. Wasn't this higher? Wasn't this like 75 or something like that? Yeah, so look, double tap, your next aim shot will fire a second time instantly at 80% power without consuming focus. Or your next rapid fire will shoot 80% additional shots during its channel. This is fucking huge. I'm quite sad about it because I was having a lot of fun with marksmanship. I thought it was OP. That's straight up why I swapped to it. And I don't know what's the point of nerfing double tap like a week before you remove it from the game regardless. So, sure, whatever. Survival, all damage increased by 3% in PvP combat. Okay, well, slightly scary because like when they pop off their burst out of nowhere, I've gotten doinked a few times, so I'm kind of scared of this. But we'll see how this goes. Now, this one is an interesting one. Mage Frost. We are redistributing some of Frost Mage's damage out of Ray of Frost and into the rest of its kit with the intention of decreasing its burst capabilities. I apologize about that. Where were we? And improving its steady state pressure. Ray of Frost damage decreased by 20% in PvP combat, and all damage increased by 3%. This is huge. This is absolutely huge. This Ray of Frost nerf is a very big deal. And it was such a big part of why so many rogue mages were getting one-shots in openers. Because the rogue would just CC the healer, smoke bomb a DPS, CC the DPS, and then the mage would Ray of Frost it, and together they would kill somebody within a kidney. So this is a huge deal as part of that. They're gonna make up for a little bit with the 3% damage increase, but I don't think it definitely doesn't make up for all of this. Definitely not. Ray of Frost is taking a huge hit right here. Protection Paladin. I can't believe they have this. They have a fucking note for Protection Paladin. Templar's burst capabilities have made Protection Paladin more of an offensive threat than we would like them to be in PvP. For real, they pop out of nowhere and they explode your ass. It's ridiculous. Divine Exaction now casts Divine Toll again at 25% effectiveness with 75% in PvP combat. Kind of a big nerf. Hammer of Light damage increased by 30% in PvP combat. Huge nerf. Hammer of Light, the few times that I ran into Protection Paladins, they've landed some huge 6-digit Hammer of Lights on me, so it's a huge deal. Red has been performing better than expected, so we're applying a small damage reduction. All ability damage reduced by 3% in PvP combat. Big one. These are huge Void Weaver nerfs right here. This priest. The Void Weaver priests are dealing too much damage in PvP. Yes, they are. Or at least when they're allowed to. We're reducing some of that damage and increasing their healing to compensate. Necessary as well because they did have crazy damage, but you could often turn on them and they would fall off like fucking piss. It was, you know, this is absolutely necessary. Expiation deals damage equals to 200% of the amount of consumed from Shadow Word Pain in PvP combat was 300%. Huge right off the bat. Inescapable Torment damage reduced by 25% in PvP combat. Huge. Shadow Word Pain damage reduced by 10% in PvP combat, also big. Void Weaver Atonement Healing increased by 15%, once again, necessary. Oracle Preventive Measures increased damage of Penance, Smite, Holy Nova by 20%. It used to be 15. Oracle did need a bit of extra damage, so I guess that's why they kept it here today. Let's see how these changes affect, to be honest. I think this seems like a pretty big hit for Void Weaver. It's still gonna do some crazy amount of damage, it's just not gonna be as oppressive as it was. And hopefully this 15% gets to make up for that. So let's see how that goes. Shadow Priest. In addition to a needed boost of overall damage, Shadow Word Death is also receiving a buff intended to make its damage worthwhile when striking enemies in its low health threshold. The execute button is getting a bit of a buff, 45% increased damage. That's it. That it's considerable, you know. Of course, I've seen Shadow Priests in other Twitch chats who saw that and are like, oh, bro, 45% damage is nothing. So, you know, I guess it is nothing. And this changes nothing. It is what it is. And the 4% aura buff as well is pretty nice. I'm expecting Shadow Priest to be going pretty well. Shaman. Resto Shaman has been behind in performance in PvP compared to Totemic. We're increasing the throughput of heals and effects provided by Farseer talents and their ancestors to help close the gap. Farseer. Maelstrom Supremacy increases healing of affected spells in PvP by 20%, was 15. Hydro Bubble's effectiveness is no longer reduced in PvP, was a 20% reduction. That's pretty big. Heals cast by Call of the Ancestors increase in PvP by 30%, was 20%. So I have to be honest, while I do not know these specific skills as of yet, Totemic seems to have been the best hero talent tree so far, so let's see how that goes. Warrior. Arms and protection. We're slightly reducing Colossus' ability to tank damage to make them more of a viable kill target. A Mountain of Muscle and Scars reduces damage taken by 3% in PvP. Combat was 5%. This seems to apply to both arms and protection. Absolutely nothing for Fury. Now, Warlock. This is the last change, and then, well, the Havoc change is saying that they've taken off the changes, so we're not going to look at that. Warlock. Affliction Warlock. All damage increased by 3% in PvP combat. Not really sure why, but sure, whatever. Demonology. I think this is something everybody can agree on at this point. Demonology feels like complete horseshit. It's okay, sure, whatever, but because it's still a Warlock, but at the end of the day, it is a lot worse. A Destruction Warlock, it is a lot worse than Affliction Warlock. Everything Demonology does, the other two do a lot better. Let's see how these changes go. Demonology damage while free casting has not been as effective as we would like. True. So we're targeting a few adjustments to Shadow Bolt and Demon Bolt with the intention of increasing their ability to punish enemies for allowing them, quote unquote, for allowing them to chain cast together. Shadow Bolt damage increased by 200% in PvP combat, and Demon Bolt damage increased by 30% in PvP combat. You don't really get to see Shadow Bolt being hardcast very often, but this is interesting. 200% might make it dink quite a little bit. And Demon Bolt damage increased by 30%. Let's see how that goes. Destruction. Incinerate damage increased by 50% in PvP combat. Sure, I mean, I don't know. I've never really noticed Incinerate, and I guess that's why they're getting a 50% in PvP combat. Overall, there's quite a few interesting changes here. Flavor of the month class that you're going to be seeing running around might be a little bit different. But overall, these changes seem a little good, to be honest. I'm not complaining about them. I think people can agree overall this patch is pretty good and some much needed changes in some cases. For Devourer, like I said, just a little bit of the self-healing reduction. We'll see just how much it will affect. I don't think it's going to be a big deal, but hey, you know, everything adds up. It is a game of percentages. After all, it's a game about min-maxing, so every little percentage matters. Anyway, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure you follow me on Twitch at twitch.tv/WShadow. I will be streaming daily for the next month or so, at least up until I go back to work, so please make sure you support the streamer dream, and you know, you drop a follow, you come hang out. Pretty much every content, every clip, everything that I get on my YouTube channel comes from Twitch. You would be getting the content live. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon. Take care.